Hi, meet again with movie recap here. On this occasion we will discuss a zombie apocalypse film from Korea. This film is titled Alive 2020. The film tells the story of a gamer who is trapped inside his apartment for weeks due to a sudden zombie outbreak. How did he survive there? Let's just start the story. The film begins by showing a gamer man named June. It appears he is still asleep after live streaming the game overnight in his room. Looks his computer and gaming equipment make drool men. Then he wakes up and washes his face. Looks his apartment is deserted, his father, mother and brother have gone first. June has a habit of being invited everywhere, always does not want go, because he prefers to play games only in his room. Then he finds a note from his mother telling June to shop for food at the market. But as usual, June is always lazy and procrastinating. Until when he returned online, his gaming buddy told him there was a strange news on TV. It seemed very bad. Then June checked the news on TV and it turned out that there was an emergency broadcast and a precarious warning to the whole community. When June checked out the window, the noise had already occurred. All the residents scattered and ran around like avoiding something. And look like there's a freak eating humans. June is still confused by this situation until he realizes this is a zombie outbreak. More precisely, a strange plague that came out of nowhere, which infects humans to behave brutally and eat each other. June panicked at this situation he never imagined. Before long, after his bedroom door was banging, it turned out that it was his room neighbor who ran scared to hide in June's room. June tells him to leave, but she still insists on staying in his room.
우리 전에 봤잖아요. 옆집, 바로 옆집.
When the person goes to the bathroom, June also sees the news that the virus that can turn people into brutal can be infected through bites and blood that goes into the wound, characterized by a pale face and bleeding eyes. Within minutes the person will change. June panicked and carried a knife until he saw the person get a bite on his hand. He also said this was not a bite, but it looks like the person is now different from before. Fortunately, June doesn't get bitten and the man is taken out, and June has to be trapped in his own apartment because there are so many horrible creatures outside that can bite him at any time. June was seen trying to contact his family, but there was no network and service in the place because of the outbreak, until at night June had to save all his food and he regretted not directly shopping for food when told by his mother. Then he fell asleep. The next day June starts trying to upload videos and upload them to social media, hoping someone knows his situation and sending help. Then June wants to look around in his apartment. He uses his drone to see the surroundings while trying to call his father. It turned out that everything was messy, there was no human life around his apartment, and because his drone was also low he could not fly his drone for a long time. He began to think if he was the only survivor, he could only wait for help to come and fill the time by playing games. But when you are engrossed in playing, suddenly the internet network is cut off, and starting from here there is no internet network. Fortunately he had uploaded the video earlier, until when night came there was a policewoman who was being chased by zombies and he obviously would not survive the invasion of zombies. She was dragged and eaten by many zombies. June, who was not able to see it, shouted at the woman. But zombies do not care. She was dragged and obviously dead, but as a result of June's screams suddenly heard a loud noise from the door. It turned out that it was a fat zombie that had entered. June held it with all his might, but the power of fat zombies could not be doubted. June runs to the balcony and the zombie falls. Fortunately June was still safe, and when he was hanging June saw the police had now become zombies. He also repaired the door that was almost broken into, and because of the fat zombie the food he stored and saved even became a mess stepped on by zombies earlier. For days, June survived in his apartment until he was almost stressed. He drank his father's collection drinks and he was drunk, until when he would wash his face it turned out that the water was no longer flowing. Then obviously his life would become heavier. Then June, who is almost resigned, also remembered with a tool that now 99.9% of people never use, the radio. He thought radio broadcasts might give him hope for life, but the app needed antenna, and he didn't have it. Long story short, 15 days already June locked up because of the zombie outbreak. He was already stressed and drunk, because that was all the water left. He began hallucinating his family who had just returned from the outside, but it was just hallucinations. He was sad and crying until suddenly there was a voice message entering his phone. He immediately looked for a signal to get the voice message, and it turned out that it was a message from his family that he said they were stuck in his father's office. But instantly June's happy face changed after being heard from the message his parents had been attacked by zombies, and obviously the possibility of his life was very small. June is angry at the zombie who has taken his parents' lives. He destroys everything and begins to be overwhelmed with a sense of disconnect. With a golf club he intends to beat the zombies. He managed to beat one zombie, but then his guts collapsed after seeing a herd of zombies who were eating one of the residents of the apartment there. Fortunately he was still able to hide and go back into his room. On the 20 days June felt a great vibration, and it turned out that it was a city that was being bombarded by military forces. Until now the power grid that had to be cut off. Seeing the increasingly chaotic situation and feeling only himself survived, he decided to kill himself. But when he was hanging suddenly appeared laser beams from the direction of the room opposite his apartment. He cancelled his plan to commit suicide knowing that someone else was still alive. It turned out that it was a beautiful woman who still survived, her name Yubin. The next day June did not get caught because he did not sleep, and at 07:00 they again greeted each other but saw June was severely hungry. Yubin also gave him food by throwing ropes, but it did not work because it was far away. Then June used his drone to connect the rope and succeeded. Yubin also gave food to June. After that suddenly there was one zombie who found Yubin's rope and he climbed up. Meanwhile Yubin faints from being hit by a table and June tries to help Yubin by using a drone. But luckily Yubin regained consciousness and cut off the zombie's hand until it fell. Long story short, the supplies have started a little. June also inevitably had to infiltrate first into the neighbor's room. He also settles, and fortunately he gets a lot of food and also a warm jacket. He finds two radios to communicate with each other, until suddenly zombies appear from behind. June survived and was then able to eat deliciously. Not forgetting he gave some of the food and also the radio to Yubin, and they were able to communicate with each other. The days they go through by strengthening each other. Just information: Yubin is a mountaineer, so she is in more depth than the June who usually just stays at home. Until when they were engrossed in chatting and suddenly sounded rumbling, they thought it was raining. So quickly they accommodated the rainwater, but it turned out that it was not rain, but a swarm of zombies who ran up to the top of the building. They were shocked and hid. Yubin nudged something that distracts the zombies. The zombies began to approach Yubin's room. Yubin felt she was going to die today. Fortunately June cleverly called the next room, so zombies switched to the voice source of the phone next to the Yubin room, and Yubin was saved. Then they realize it's not safe if they have to keep quiet in their room. They plan an escape by going up to the 8th floor, where it looks clean, there are no zombies. They strengthen each other and Yubin, an outdoor expert, starts jumping from his apartment. Yubin fights and runs to avoid so many zombies that she finds a gun. Yubin begins to corner, but fortunately June is saved and they run into the building to go up to the 8th floor. There they start to open the doors one by one but locked. Suddenly one zombie appears who calls the other zombies and attacks the two of them. As hard as June can hold the zombies, and fortunately there is one door open and save them. It turns out that the one who saved them was a man who was also trapped inside his apartment. Yubin had little faith in the man, but wanted to do it again. They had to believe because there was a lot of food from the man. They ate and drank until there was a chat where the man said soon the SAR team would make a rescue. Yubin and June, who heard it, were so happy that June suddenly fainted and Yubin experienced dizziness. It turns out that the man is evil and will sacrifice Yubin to his wife, who is already a zombie. This man intends to feed his wife, who is always hungry. June then realizes and will save Yubin but is blocked. As hard as June can hold the zombie's leash but escapes. But fortunately Yubin managed to contain the zombie and turn things around with the zombies that ate the man. The man was bitten and they were shot by Yubin. But because the sound of the gunfire was loud enough, it made the zombies into the apartment. Yubin surrenders and tells June to shoot her. Fortunately they hear the sound of a helicopter and they get a glimmer of hope to fight back for their lives. Then they struggle to escape to the top of the building to ask the helicopter for help, struggling to get past the zombies. Until finally Yubin managed to get to the top of the building, but it turned out that the helicopter did not exist. June, who came, was the same, looking and screaming for help, but there was no sign at all. While the zombies broke back in and chased them, June shot the zombie with the remaining bullets, until when the zombies were close, the helicopter came and shot the zombies. They were saved. On the heli they again got a signal and all the messages that were detained entered. Obviously the contents of the message are messages from his parents who have died, but June is grateful to be safe with Yubin.